Welcome to Ion Technology. I'm Marcus, and I'm here with a very special guest, Adam Koralik.
Yo,
Adam,
what's up?
Thanks for hanging out with me today.
Thanks for having me.
You brought something very special.
I did. So what you're looking at right here is property of Roger Vega. He's an awesome guy who was cool enough to let me borrow this from him. This is the Sega Pluto prototype. Now, if you know anything about Sega history, you're probably familiar with the Sega Saturn, at least.
I've heard of the Sega Saturn.
Sega Saturn,
yeah.
right, okay.
Okay.
Okay, let's show them. Sega Saturn, I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. There's so Sega had this weird obsession with planets, so a lot of consoles. Sega Game Gear was actually the prototype, was called Sega Mercury. Sega Venus was a prototype handheld Genesis, eventually kind of evolved into the Nomad. The Sega Earth was the Sega CD, which is why when you boot it up, you see the Earth behind it.
Holy shit.
The Sega Mars was the 32X. If you open up a 32X and look at the motherboard, it says Mars on it.
It says Mars.
It says Mars on it.
Holy crap. I didn't know that.
Sega Jupiter was an unreleased Virtual Boy competitor that Sega was going to make. And then when Virtual Boy failed, they just stopped.
They're like, this is a bad idea.
Yeah,
Let's not make
that
this.
never got anywhere. The Sega Saturn, you obviously know. Uranus, they just skipped for probably obvious reasons. Neptune was a 32X and Genesis in one combo. There's one of those in existence. I've held it. It's at the Video Game Museum, the National Video Game Museum in Frisco, Texas. It's just a prosthetic type of plastic thing.
I've seen pictures of it.
Right, yeah, I can show you other pictures later of it. And bad ones, you won't like them.
Okay.
Dirty pictures as well.
Dirty pictures.
But then the last, at the time in the 90s, Pluto was still considered a planet. And so the last planet up was the Sega Pluto, which is this device. There are only 2 operational ones in the entire world, and there's a third that's just a mock-up, which is actually also at the National Video Game Museum. It's a fun little trip I did down there with this. We took that down there, and we put it next to its brother, and next to the Neptune, and it's like putting the Infinity Gauntlet, rings, like the gems together, the stones together. It's like the nerd Infinity Gauntlet. Anyway, but yes, this is a fully operational Sega Saturn, ultimately. North American region coded, but it's also got a bunch of other, obviously the design, you see it's much wider and everything. But what's really interesting about it is certain things under the hood. This has a built-in modem, and it also has a built-in hard drive. And I mean an actual hard drive, like a 540 megabyte hard drive, which is laughable now, but in 1996, January of 1996, there's a timestamp on it. That's ridiculous.
And it's also a small form factor. It's like 2.5 inch. Which is like a laptop hard drive from way back in the mid to late 90s.
Yeah. So, exactly. So, we're not 100% certain on what Sega's plan was. I reached out to people who worked there, because I have friends there, but none of them worked there at the time. So they were like, all we know is that we made 6 and destroyed 4.
Wow.
So 2 of them went unaccounted, hence one is right here. One is the other one we know to work, and they weren't including the mock-up one that's in Frisco. So if you want to include that, there's 3. But yeah, this one is fully operational. We think it's basically a near finalized version of it, and it's just been very interesting. And the way Roger got it, for anybody who's curious, is in 1999 he went to a flea market in Ceres, California, which is near Stockton, California, which is near Modesto, which is near San Francisco. There's your whatever. But he went out to this flea market and he saw a pile of CD players and VCRs, and the guy had it just sitting in there.
Wow. And
Roger didn't know what it was. He just saw the Saturn logo on the top, and so he figured, oh, it's a Sega Saturn. But he's like, doesn't look like, I don't know what Sega Saturn that is. I don't recognize. And the guy was like, how much do you want for it? He's like, $5. And Roger's like, here's 3. I got 3. Is that good enough? Yeah, whatever.
Wow.
And then it sat in a shoebox because he thought it didn't work. Because at the time the disc lid was always up and the controller port was broken. So he just held on to it, and he forgot basically that he even had it. And then around 2013, the other one, the other known working one, showed up in Japan randomly.
Oh, crazy!
Somebody who worked at Sega or took it from Sega. We're not entirely certain exactly, but this guy had it. He died. Somebody was clearing through his stuff, found it, and then, what is this? And the whole world explodes, saying what is this thing? And Roger sees the same post, and he's like, I have one of those. No, you don't. Nobody has that.
Yeah.
And he's like, here. And then it all just went nuts from there. And so Roger actually was originally like, does anybody want it? Does anybody want to buy it? Yeah. And then people were like, there was a lot of drama around it. So Roger's like, I don't want to do that. I don't care about all this. So he put it in another shoebox for another 6 years.
Wow.
And then at the beginning of 2020, I'm hanging out with my buddy Jesse, who's right over there. He and I went out to a store in Campbell, California called, what's it called? Fix It Retro? Play It Retro. Retrofix. Sorry, it's been a while, Rudy. I haven't been to that store in a while. But anyway, so yeah, there's Jesse right there. But we were the Retrofix out in Campbell, California, and I'm talking to Rudy, super nice guy, and he's just like, he randomly goes, have you ever heard of the Sega Pluto? Like, nobody's ever heard of this thing. I'm like, yeah, it's a wide body Sega Saturn, okay? Like, he was like, okay. He's like, well, the guy who owns it lives 10 minutes from here. You want to see it? And I'm like, what? And so Roger just shows up 10 minutes later with this thing. Yeah, man, I don't care. Here you go. That's how Roger talks.
That's great.
Roger's the nicest guy, but that's totally how he talks. So he knows it. So Roger shows up with this thing, and I'm just like sitting in awe, like, and I'm like, can I make a video about it? Yeah, man, I don't care, do what the fuck you want. That's how he talks. And I don't mean that in a negative way. Just
no,
Roger
sure,
would
awesome.
Roger, if you're watching, I know you're laughing. But anyway, so I started tinkering with it, and I'm like, okay, it's region locked, so that's why he couldn't get it to work, because he thought it was just playing Japanese games. So I put an American game in, but the disc lid, I was like, all right, I'll close it, and it started booting a game. So it was the first time it had booted a game in at least 20 years.
Wow.
What were we playing? It was some RPG on the Saturn. That's what Rudy had. Legend of the Oasis.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that was the first one. That was the first game that was played on this thing in 20 years. But the controller port didn't work. So I was like, what's up with that? And then I remembered, Saturn's controller port number 1 often has a problem where if you just lift up on it, it'll start working. Mm-hmm. So I did that, and it started working. And I was like, okay, there's hope. So I told Roger, like, here's everything I did. I made the video on site, all that sort of stuff. And then I was like, we need to take the next step here. So I contacted Ben Heck, and I was like, let's get some work done on this. Roger was cool with it, Ben was cool with it. So we went up to Madison, Wisconsin, and Ben basically fixed the controller port. He was like, it was a really small issue, took care of it. He was like, there really was nothing else wrong with it, but he just like reflowed everything.
Yeah.
Obviously he's an engineer. I'm just using the wrong terms. The point is, he did everything under the hood that he could. But the only other thing to do was fix the disc lid. And he's like, the problem with the disc lid is there's a little piece of like white plastic in there. He's like, Sega never built it. It just wasn't there. They just never did it. So he literally 3D printed one, he designed one, mounted it in there, and as you can see,
that's so funny. It's just they didn't even add the.
It was. We think it was just a proof of concept prototype. Like it wasn't meant to be released in this state.
You remember? You know what that reminds me of is the old Action Replay on Sony PlayStation 1,
mm-hmm.
and it came with the little spring that you had to keep the lid open all the time.
Right.
Disc swapping.
Yep.
No, that's so cool. And here it is, and it's got like a nice finish too. Were the button or the labels, the open and the reset, like redone, or do you think?
Nope. This is exactly how Roger found it.
It's super nice.
Yeah, he has taken very good care of it. We cleaned it up as best we can. The problem with it, again, prototype. So it's the black color is not actually with the color of the plastic. It's actually a white color. This is painted. Which unfortunately means it can scratch very easily. So we have to try and take as best care of it as we can. But
is that from them or something that Roger did?
No, this is how we found it.
Okay.
And so we've been doing our best to keep it as clean and nice as we can, but there are little scuffs and stuff. Again, it happens over time.
Yeah.
But he was cool enough to let us borrow it to take it around to some shows and so on and show it to people. And so since we're in Astoria, Oregon right now, we were like, we're going to take it the movie tour. So we took it to the Goonies house. We took it over to the kindergarten cop school, the Goonies jail, and I loved posting those photos because people were like, I know that movie and I know that thing, but why are they together?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's a strange merging of worlds.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the video out, because
sure.
Right now it's in composite.
This is actually the first time we've ever tested it with composite.
There you go. Yeah, we like scrounged around my house for a composite cable. I never use composite cables actually. I always have like SCART and RGB and all my Saturn stuff, it's all that. But we found one. And so, yeah, it's working on this little CRT. Looks good.
Nights into Dreams.
Nights into Dreams. So, but yeah, like essentially because like the Saturn, it natively supports RGB out. Yep. So if you just have the cable to SCART, then you can capture it with a FrameMeister, which is what I usually would do, or the OSSC. Mm-hmm. What else would do that?
Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Retro 5X would be my recommendation.
Okay. And why is that? Because it's priced right?
The RetroTink 5X is, in my opinion, far superior to the OSSC in just about every single way.
Okay.
The FrameMeister, in my opinion, is the best one, but the FrameMeister and the Saturn don't really get along very well because the Saturn does a lot of resolution changes on the fly,
and
the FrameMeister does not like that. But the RetroTink doesn't care and handles it very well. So the RetroTink, to me, is the perfect device for the Sega Saturn.
So a little question I was thinking of is, if this thing came out 2 years after the Saturn was already around, I mean, what was it for?
You're asking what the point was?
Yeah, what was the point of this thing?
So the thing is, we can only speculate. Our assumption is that we believe that these were designed by Sega of America, not Sega of Japan.
Interesting.
And we think that Sega of America was like, okay, if we're gonna, because we famously know now that they didn't really believe in the Saturn, but we feel like they might have said, okay, if we redesign it with a different functionality, it might work. And they were correct in believing that online gaming was the future. They were just way too early with it. So it's possible that if they had got these out there with online functionality right out of the box, that it might have taken off. But we think, A, that Sega of Japan was like, no, this is too expensive. And just, B, like, you can't one-up us. That's kind of what we think. But we're not 100%, obviously.
Can we open the lid up?
Yes, but I have to turn it off.
Okay.
That's your power button. And there's your lid.
Wow, and there's the 3D printed little latch.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, the latch is OG. There's if you open up the lid, underneath the open button, there's this little like white blob thing that's what Ben actually went and made.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
But without that blob thing, this piece of plastic just falls inside.
Okay, got it. So it was there, just wasn't attached.
Yeah, but there wasn't a piece to attach it to.
And this is the memory expansion, right? Like the backup
Yeah,
card?
this is where you put the memory cards and ultimately where you could put the netlink.
Is there any expansion port on the bottom or on the side or anything
The
else?
VCD card slot is here, as well as, like I said, the modem on the bottom and the hard drive on the top. Modem, hard drive.
It's kind of interesting how industrial they look.
Well, I mean,
Like they're
prototype.
just, yeah.
The thing is, for anybody curious, it does not do anything with those in its current state.
Yeah.
Again, hardware proof of concept is our guess.
Yeah.
But it's not like you turn it on and it has a separate menu that says, like, here's how to click on the hard drive. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
Prototype.
Prototype, yeah. Cool.
Awesome. Well, there you go. That's the amazing Sega Pluto. Thanks for bringing it.
No problem. Thank Roger.
Thank you, Roger. We appreciate it. It's very educational. I love Sega stuff. I had no idea about all that stuff with the 32X saying what? Mars?
It says Mars. Yeah.
That's
Open
fantastic.
one up. It's on the board.
I
It
think
says
I
Mars.
have one right somewhere behind us. Some bins. Anyway, thanks for watching, you guys. Go check out Adam's channel, Adam Koralik.
Yo.
Does really informative stuff. He's a Sega freak like myself. So that's...
I'm the only person in the entire world that has held two Sega Plutos at the same time.
That sounds true to me.
I've got
I'm
photos.
not going to doubt
I've
that.
got photos.
Yeah.
And a Neptune was right there.
It's the trilogy of terror.
It's the trilogy of useless, but
Yeah.
it's so cool.
All right, well, thanks for watching. Till next time, you know what you're going to do. You're going
Later.
to keep that shit retro by playing Nights into Dreams on a Sega Pluto later on.